This guy is an incompetent freeloader. I'll fire him tomorrow. My direct supervisor, Manager Thompson, said with a nasty smile to the CO who had come from the UK headquarters. Was I finally going to be fired? Normally, getting fired wouldn't be a happy occasion, but part of me was a bit relieved at the thought of being free from Manager Thompson. While I felt frustrated at being fired by the manager I despised, for no fault of my own, I thought maybe it couldn't be helped. As I sighed thinking this, the CO, who had been watching, uttered some shocking words, and Manager Thompson was easily defeated. My name is Sam Miller, and I'm 35 years old. I'm single and not married yet. This is because I've been so busy with work that I haven't had time to find a partner. Also, I've always liked being alone, which might be influencing this as well. I lost both my parents to illness before I was old enough to understand. With no relatives willing to take in a young child, I was placed in a foster care facility. Being quiet and shy, I had trouble adjusting to the atmosphere of the facility. It was then that someone treated me like their own child, the facility director, Mrs. Wilson. Mrs. Wilson always talked to me when I was quiet and kept my head down. Sam, what kind of food do you like? I didn't answer her question and kept looking down. But Mrs. Wilson didn't give up. You had seconds of the omelet, right? So you must like omelet rice. I nodded quietly. Mrs. Wilson smiled. Then next time, let's make omelet together, she said, patting my head. I gradually opened up to Mrs. Wilson's friendly approach. When I entered elementary school, Mrs. Wilson and I became even closer. We would go for walks together, play games, and spend time like a real family. Even without parents, I felt that as long as I had Mrs. Wilson, everything would be okay. I hoped these happy days would continue forever. One summer day, Mrs. Wilson called me with a serious expression. Overwhelmed by the heavy atmosphere, I fell silent. Mrs. Wilson began to speak hesitantly. Sam, there's actually a family who wants to adopt you. Would you like to go and meet them? Huh? I was too surprised by Mrs. Wilson's words to say anything more. You've just started elementary school, Sam. I think you need a family's love. They're very nice people, and I'm sure you'll be happy with them. Your new father runs a company and has plenty of money. You'll be able to pursue whatever path you want. Mrs. Wilson hugged me as she said this. It was then that I finally understood the reality of the situation. But I want to stay with you, Mrs. Wilson. I want to live with you forever. Hearing my words, Mrs. Wilson's eyes filled with tears as she said, I love you like my own son, Sam. But you need a real family. I'll always be here. If you ever feel lonely, you can always come and visit me. No matter what I said, I could see from Mrs. Wilson's face that this adoption was going to happen. I burst into tears right there. Mrs. Wilson quietly held me close. On the fateful day, my new adoptive parents came to pick me up. They looked at me with warm smiles as I remained cautious. They bent down to my eye level and slowly explained who they were. Nice to meet you. I'm going to be your new father. My name is John Miller. I've never been a father before, but I promise to cherish you for the rest of my life. You'll cherish me for the rest of your life? I looked at my adoptive father's face with doubtful eyes. Then my adoptive mother hugged me without saying anything and said, I'm Lisa, your new mom. I'll do my best to be a good mother to you. I froze in surprise. With Mrs. Wilson seeing me off, I was taken to a certain place by my adoptive parents. We arrived at their large house, which was even bigger than the facility I had been living in. As I looked around in amazement, I noticed many photos displayed. Despite my adoptive parents not having children, these photos showed many children with bright smiles. Who were these children? As I wondered this, my adoptive father, noticing my curiosity, explained. These children are from disadvantaged backgrounds in foster care. My wife and I support them. I couldn't believe my ears. There were dozens of children in the photos. I thought my adoptive parents must have really big hearts to support so many children. As I was impressed, my adoptive parents revealed a surprising fact to me. Actually, both my wife and I grew up in foster care too. That's why, now that we're financially stable, we wanted to help children in similar situations. We were helped by supporters when we were young. We need to pay back the kindness we received. At that moment, for the first time, I felt glad to have become their child. From then on, I started attending the local school while actively helping with my adoptive parents' volunteer work. On Saturdays, they would bring lots of sandwiches to the foster care facility. The plan was to have a picnic in the park with the children. Being naturally shy, I hid behind my adoptive mother as we moved. The children at the facility were all energetic and actively invited me to play, but I decided to play catch with my adoptive mother instead. When I went to retrieve a ball that had rolled into the shade of a tree, there was a boy there. As soon as the boy saw my face, he frowned and glared at me. Not understanding why I was being glared at, I decided to return to my adoptive mother. Seeing my slightly dissatisfied expression, my adoptive mother curiously asked for the reason. So I honestly explained about the boy. My adoptive mother looked at me gently and said, "Ah, that boy. His name is Tommy. He just arrived at the facility, so he's probably still wary. Wait here a moment." I remembered how guarded I was when I first entered the facility. Tommy must be in a similar situation. As I thought this, my adoptive mother walked over to Tommy. She began speaking to him softly. "Tommy, would you like to play catch with us?" When my adoptive mother said this, Tommy's face brightened a little as he stood up. He nodded slightly and approached us. We started playing catch together. It was only for a few minutes, but it became a very enjoyable time. Tommy and I became friends. Although I initially thought Tommy was scary, after talking to him, I found he was actually a very friendly boy. It turns out he was raised by a single mother who had passed away due to illness, resulting in his placement in the facility. Feeling a connection to Tommy's similar background, I started playing with him every time I visited the facility after that picnic. While I made many friends at school and enjoyed my life, the time I spent with Tommy felt different somehow. My adoptive parents seemed pleased seeing me like this. As this continued for about a year, my adoptive parents were busy preparing for a Christmas event at the facility. I decided to help them. Christmas is one of the events the children at the facility look forward to the most. So we want to prepare well and make the children happy, they explained. Yes, their feelings strongly resonated with me. I had same feeling. On Christmas Day, I arrived at the usual facility with my adoptive parents. As soon as we entered, the children rushed to greet my parents. However, Tommy wasn't among them. It was strange, as he would usually come to me first. I looked around but couldn't find him. My adoptive mother noticed my concern and revealed a shocking truth. "Are you looking for Tommy?" I had a bad feeling as she asked this. Swallowing hard, I looked at her slightly disappointed face. "Yes," I replied. My adoptive mother looked straight at me and said, "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. Tommy has gone to live with a new family." A new family? I was stunned. My adoptive mother hugged me and said, "Tommy has a family now. It's a joyous thing. If you live earnestly, there will surely come a day when you'll meet Tommy again." But I was too shocked to process her words. While it might be a happy occasion that Tommy found a new family, I felt a bit lonely. The Christmas event proceeded smoothly and ended successfully. A few years later, I graduated from college and entered the workforce. I got a job at a famous company I had always wanted to work for, thinking I could finally repay my adoptive parents. However, I soon learned that reality wasn't so kind. In the department I was assigned to, there was a manager named Thompson who seemed to have it out for me. Manager Thompson had joined the company after graduating from a prestigious university and was considered an elite employee, noticed by higher upas as a potential executive. Although Thompson is my direct superior now, he used to be my peer when we first joined the company. I first met him at the company entrance ceremony. Having heard from a mutual acquaintance that I grew up in a facility, he immediately looked down on me saying, "How did someone from a facility manage to get hired here? It must be a miracle," Mr. Thompson says like that. I was shocked to hear such words from a fellow new employee I had just met. Unfortunately, we ended up working in the same department, and he started picking on me at every opportunity. I tried to ignore him and focus on my work. Then one day, something unbelievable happened. We received news that Thompson was being promoted to manager. I was filled with disbelief, knowing all too well how things would turn out with such an unpleasant person as manager. As expected, from the moment Thompson became manager, he started to exploit me. "Miller, go buy me a cup of coffee." "What?" he would command. Confused by this order that had nothing to do with work, I hesitated. "Didn't you understand, you incompetent?" I said, "Go buy me coffee right now." Manager Thompson's loud voice echoed throughout the office, and my other colleagues fell silent. Why should I have to buy coffee? I didn't agree with this, but thinking it would cause more trouble if I refused, I stood up to follow Manager Thompson's order. I quickly bought machine-made coffee and returned to hand it to Manager Thompson, who looked displeased for some reason. He glared at me and shouted angrily, "Are you kidding me? How dare you give me a machine-made coffee? This is unacceptable." "Excuse me?" I was confused, not understanding what was wrong with the coffee. Thompson yelled even louder, "I want real coffee. Are you so incompetent that you can't even figure that out? This is why people from facilities are useless." What? Anger surged through my body. My colleagues around us looked at Thompson with disbelief. I desperately suppressed my anger and left the company to buy coffee again, as Thompson demanded. I couldn't shake off my anger at how selfish he could be. From then on, almost every day, I was forced to buy coffee for Thompson. Not just coffee, but lunchboxes, snacks, and all sorts of things. As a result, my work piled up and my productivity declined. Despite this, Thompson kept criticizing me for the accumulated work. "Hey, you haven't made any progress with your work. Are you just here to steal a salary?" I was speechless. Wasn't one of the reasons for my slow progress Thompson's trivial orders? I wanted to say this but held back, only managing to say, "I'm sorry," but Thompson clicked his tongue at my apology. If sorry was enough, we wouldn't need the police. "I'd like to fire you, but I'm too kind for that. You should be grateful to me." I was shocked. Even for a manager, he hadn't done anything to deserve such arrogance. I was seething with frustration. As I endured these hellish days, one day I arrived at work to find the office in a commotion. While I was preparing for work, wondering what was going on, my colleague in the next seat whispered to me, "The CEO from China headquarters is coming for an inspection." It seems it was suddenly decided, and everyone's in a panic. I see, so that's what's happening. Whether the CEO came or not, it didn't matter to me. I had to focus on the pile of work in front of me. Just then, Thompson started yelling at me in a panicked voice. "Forget about work for now. Clean this office immediately." I couldn't believe my ears. It was Thompson who had been telling me to finish my accumulated work quickly. Now he wanted me to prioritize cleaning. I was too dumbfounded to speak. With no choice, I started cleaning as Thompson ordered. Meanwhile, Thompson was frantically tidying his own desk. As time passed, the clock soon struck 10. At that moment, the office door swung open forcefully. The CEO from China headquarters entered, accompanied by Executive Director Mason. "Nice to meet you. I'm Alan, the CEO of this company." CEO Alan from China greeted everyone in fluent English. It was amazing that a Chinese man could speak such perfect English. My colleagues seemed to think the same, looking at Alan with great interest. Alan looked American, and at first glance, he must be of Western descent. Manager Thompson hurried to the door and thanked deeply. "Thank you for coming all this way." Alan looked puzzled at Thompson's words. Ignoring Thompson, he approached me as I was cleaning. "Are you a janitor?" Slightly confused by the sudden question, I answered honestly, "No, I'm an employee in this department." Alan looked perplexed and turned to Thompson. "This department makes employees do cleaning? How can this employee get any work done?" Alan's point was valid. Thompson, looking a bit flustered, started making excuses with gestures. "This guy is really incompetent. He's so useless that I have him doing odd jobs even now." While saying this, Thompson maintained a nasty smile despite making excuses. I was overwhelmed with anger, not expecting to be looked down upon even in front of Alan. Alan raised his voice at Thompson. "Is this how you always treat your subordinates? There's no way my company has employees who can only do odd jobs." "Shut up." Alan expressed his anger, mixing in some English and Chinese. Then he turned to me. "You need to speak up strongly too. In this company, everyone should be equal, regardless of titles like manager." Thompson's eyes widened as Alan said this. Alan sighed and noticed the keychain hanging from my pocket phone. He seemed shocked. Everyone in the office watched the scene with bated breath. After a moment of silence, Alan spoke with a trembling voice. "Who are you?" "Huh." As I was confused, Thompson, unable to read the room, made another disparaging comment about me. "This guy is an incompetent freeloader. He's from a facility and probably couldn't study properly. There's no way someone like him can contribute to this company. I'll fire him tomorrow." The office fell silent again. Was I finally going to be fired? Normally, getting fired wouldn't be a happy occasion, but part of me was a bit relieved at the thought of being free from Thompson. While I felt frustrated at being fired by the manager I despised for no fault of my own, I thought maybe it couldn't be helped. As I was thinking this, Executive Director Mason's body began to shake with anger. "Manager Thompson, what are you saying? CO Allen was also in a facility." "What?" Thompson's face turned pale in an instant. It was news to me too that Allen had the same background as me. Thompson tried to explain himself, but it was too late. The next moment, Allen's angry voice echoed through the office. "You're making the worst possible statement as a human being. What does it matter if someone was raised in a facility? That's a terrible prejudice. I came from a facility, but I've studied harder than anyone. I just misspoke. It's not what I really think. Really, I'm sorry." Thompson was panicking unusually. Then Allen approached me. Looking at my face, he began to speak quietly. "Even if raised in a facility, Sam is a very good person. I won't allow such a good person to be fired," Allen said. This was my first time meeting Allen. I wondered why he was speaking so highly of me when we just met, and how he knew my name. Thompson desperately said, "Of course, we won't fire Miller. It was just a joke. There must be something wrong with him to make such a dark joke." That's what I thought. But this meant I was hanging on by a thread. For me, who had been thinking it might be okay to quit, it was a complicated feeling, but I was grateful to Allen. Allen hugged me suddenly, leaving me confused. He asked, "Don't you remember me?" His words made me realize he did look familiar. When I figured out who he was, I couldn't stop shaking. Such a coincidence seemed impossible, but I decided to try calling his name. Could it be Tommy? Allen's face lit up with joy. "That's right. My Japanese name is Tommy. You remembered well." I pinched my cheek, but it hurt. This wasn't a dream, it was reality. The person in front of me was Tommy, whom I'd met during volunteer work at the facility when I was in elementary school. Thompson looked at us in disbelief. "Were you acquainted before?" Thompson asked. Allen nodded happily. "Not just acquainted. Sam is more than family to me." "I see," Director Thompson responded, desperately trying to control his trembling. I ignored Thompson's words and addressed Mr. Allen. "But how did you realize I was Sam? It's been 25 years since we last met, and my appearance has changed quite a bit, hasn't it?" Mr. Allen pointed at my strap. "That's something I sent to Sam for his birthday. Moreover, I made it myself, so there's nothing else like it in the world. Look, it's exactly the same as this, right?" He showed me his keychain, which was identical to mine. We looked at each other and laughed. Actually, about a year after I suddenly lost contact with Tommy, I received a Christmas card. It came from China. Surprised, as I didn't know anyone in China, I opened the card to find it was written in Japanese and was from Tommy. The card described his new Cheese family who had adopted him, which reassured me and my foster parents. At the end of the card, he expressed his desire to start a correspondence with me. Of course, I immediately wrote back to Tommy. This began our exchange of letters. Tommy wrote about how he enjoyed his life in China and how kind his new family was. Reading his letters always made me happy, as if it were happening to me. I wrote back about my mundane daily life in Japan. That year, Tommy's letter included this strap. He said he learned how to make it at school and crafted it himself, with the American flag as its motif. Though crudely made, it was a very precious gift to me. Whenever I faced difficulties, I would look at this keychain to calm myself. It became an important connection between Tommy and me. Our correspondence continued for a while, but one day I became unable to send letters. This was because my foster father's company went bankrupt. Our family had to flee the town hurriedly. As a result, I no longer had the luxury of writing to Tommy. Although I managed to graduate from university with scholarships and part-time job money, life remained difficult. I started working for this famous company partly because I wanted to make life easier for my foster parents. Many times I wanted to write to Tommy about this, but I didn't want to burden an important friend with my sad circumstances, so I couldn't bring myself to send a letter. Director Thompson, who had witnessed my entire exchange with Mr. Allen, suddenly changed his attitude towards me. I had no idea you were so close to the CEO. Let's work well together from now on. I was shocked. At the same time, I was amazed that he could say such a thing after how he had treated me all this time. But I knew that as long as I continued working with Director Thompson, I would keep having unpleasant experiences. I didn't want to let him have his way anymore. So, I exposed to Mr. Allen how Director Thompson had been treating me. Director Thompson has been making me do non-work-related tasks. Because of this, my actual work has been piling up. Despite this, he kept telling me I was incompetent because my work was slow. I can't take it anymore. As I said this, Director Thompson visibly panicked. What are you saying? That's not true at all. Just because the CEO's here, don't start making things up. The office suddenly became noisy, and Managing Director Mason glared at Thompson. Director Thompson, is what Miller is saying true? Have you been looking down on your subordinates like this? Is that why your department has such a high turnover rate? Managing Director Mason, that's not true. This guy is lying. He's trying to set me up. Set him up? What is he saying? Does he think I'm the kind of person who would do such a thing? I couldn't believe it. Thompson truly was an irredeemable, terrible person. There's no point in trying to reason with such a person. As I was wondering how to explain, a loud voice came from within the office. Everything Miller is saying is true. Director Thompson has been pushing non-work-related tasks onto Miller. It's Director Thompson who's lying. Following this, my colleagues began speaking up one after another, revealing unfavorable things about Director Thompson. Director Thompson is especially harsh on subordinates who didn't graduate from prestigious universities and looks down on them. I can't work with such a superior. Mr. Allen could only sigh deeply at the unbelievable truths that kept coming out. When Director Thompson realized his subordinates weren't on his side, he exploded in anger. All of you, remember this. Anyone who speaks such nonsense is fired. The office fell silent again at Thompson's words. Then Mr. Allen spoke louder than anyone else. The one who's fired is you. What? Director Thompson involuntarily stepped back, clearly shocked. He approached Mr. Allen with an incredulous look on his face. Why? There's no one as capable as me. In fact, since I became director, our performance has skyrocketed. Mr. Allen suddenly burst out laughing. What are you saying? Are you insane? The company's improved performance isn't just because of you. It's thanks to each and every employee working here. Now that you understand, pack your things and get out. This is too harsh. I have a family. Are you telling me to become homeless? Director Thompson was muttering something nearby, but Mr. Allen wasn't listening. I know speak English, Mr. Allen said humorously. His sense of humor hadn't changed at all since the old days. I couldn't help but laugh. You were speaking fluent English just a moment ago. Please, anything but firing me. Mr. Allen walked out of the office entrance. Director Thompson tried desperately to follow him, but was stopped by Managing Director Mason. Reluctantly, he began preparing to leave the office. He left without saying a word to anyone, marking the end of Thompson's reign. Later, I heard through the grapevine that Director Thompson had divorced his wife and become separated from his children. Apparently, he had begged his wife not to divorce him, but she, who had already been troubled by Thompson's rough behavior, wouldn't listen. It seems his wife is demanding an unreasonable amount in alimony, and Thompson is working multiple part-time jobs to keep paying. This is all because of Thompson's behavior that went beyond common sense. I sincerely hope that from now on, he'll lead a more proper life for the sake of his wife and children. As for me, reuniting with Tommy, now Mr. Allen, led to an unbelievable miracle. It happened 2 months after I told him about my foster father's company going bankrupt and our financial struggles. Suddenly, Mr. Allen appeared at our small apartment and made a shocking announcement. "I am who I am today because of your support. This is just a small token of my gratitude." Saying this, he handed a key to my foster parents. I've had it properly renovated. Incredibly, the key was to that big house where my foster parents and I used to live. My foster parents broke down crying on the spot. Yes, Mr. Allen had purchased that house, which had been put up for sale, for my foster parents. "To think you'd do so much for us. Thank you so much." When my foster father said this, Mr. Allen smiled and replied, "Even a small act of kindness can save many people. You are exemplars of humanity." I think that's true. My friendship with Mr. Allen continues to this day. I'm sure our close relationship will never change. When you're kind to others, it comes back to you in unexpected ways. That's what I've learned in my life. I want to become a person who can be kind to others, just like my foster parents and Mr. Allen.